Coleman Hughes, The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America. Dive into a thought-provoking exploration of race politics in Coleman Hughes's The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America. This book challenges the contemporary understanding of racism and introduces the concept of neo-racism, where racial discrimination has evolved rather than disappeared. Hughes revisits the core principles of the civil rights movement, highlighting the historical embrace of colorblindness as a way to acknowledge our common humanity over racial divisions. As you navigate through this summary, you'll uncover the evolution of racial ideologies and their impact on modern institutions like government, education, and media. Expect to confront challenging ideas, historical insights, and the provocative argument that moving beyond race discussions may be crucial to fostering true equality. Hughes invites us to rethink what genuine anti-racism means in a society tangled with newfound stereotypes and divides, urging a return to universal values and equality under the law.
Neo-racism Unveiled. Ready to dive into a challenging conversation? Let's unravel the complexities of racism. First, we need to establish what race truly signifies. It's a social construction born from natural phenomena, tracing back to human migration patterns. But here's the catch: this construct has drifted from its origins. Every human shares common ancestors, making it impossible to precisely delineate ethnic groups genetically. The racial categories we use today are random constructs, devoid of scientific or rational basis. What then is racism? Civil rights luminaries like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. saw it as a doctrine promoting the inherent inferiority of particular ethnic groups. It was, and still is, a notion that any group is lesser due to their ethnic identity. Civil rights advocates, in battling this ideology, championed colorblindness as an ethical tenet. This principle dictated that race should not dictate how we treat individuals, be it in public policy or personal interactions. By embracing colorblindness, they underscored the idea that humanity's shared essence transcends skin color or lineage. However, modern interpretations of anti-racism seem to be veering off course, morphing into what could be accurately termed neo-racism. This contemporary wave promotes a new kind of prejudice, often targeting white people as inherently inferior. The principle of colorblindness, which was originally a bedrock of anti-racism, appears betrayed. For instance, Robin DiAngelo, in her provocative book, White Fragility, talks about striving to be less white, equating whiteness to traits like ignorance and a lack of compassion. Such stereotyping aligns traits with a racial category, challenging the very ideals of the civil rights movement. Neo-racism begs the question: how did this become synonymous with anti-racism? Authentic anti-racism opposes racial stereotyping and discrimination universally, regardless of who it targets. It upholds judging individuals by their character rather than skin color. This means rejecting any justification of racial bias or supremacy claims. True advocates for racial equality hold on to the conviction of our shared humanity and equal footing. They concentrate on concrete, effective policies that tangibly dismantle racism and uplift lives, steering clear of abstract, divisive ideologies. This vision forms the ongoing, pivotal task of the civil rights movement as it perseveres into our era. The colorblind legacy. Have you ever pondered how the idea of a colorblind society came to be? Contrary to the modern claim by some that colorblindness is merely a myth crafted by conservatives, its roots reflect a deeper truth that shaped significant historical milestones. The vision of a government that overlooks racial distinctions drove movements like the abolition of slavery and the fight for civil rights. In the 1860s, abolitionist Wendell Phillips proposed a constitutional amendment, seeking a government free of racial bias. Although his idea wasn't fully realized in the final 14th Amendment, the principle endured. Fast forward to the 20th century, when civil rights leaders like Philip Randolph and Thurgood Marshall rallied against the injustices of Jim Crow using this very notion. Their advocacy found victory in landmarks like the Brown v. Board decision, which rejected racial segregation. The enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 further cemented colorblindness into law by prohibiting racial discrimination across various sectors of American life. However, despite these progressive strides, the principle of colorblindness soon took a backseat to race-conscious policies like affirmative action. The authors view this shift as a departure from the ideals fought for by visionaries such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Bayard Rustin, who advocated for a united humanity beyond racial divides. They, alongside Frederick Douglass, asserted that race should not define our identities or guide our principles. Douglass famously said he opposed racism not due to his race but because of his common humanity. Today, many who dismiss colorblindness forget that revered leaders rejected all forms of racism, aiming instead for a society where individuals are valued for their character. Remember the true origin of the colorblind dream, a nation where judgment is based on soul, not appearance. Neo-racism's rise. Neo-racist ideology, once confined to the outskirts of academia, now permeates influential sectors, from government to education. This shift is evident in new policies, such as COVID relief measures that allocate aid based on skin color rather than need, and the CDC's and New York State's pandemic strategies, which considered prioritizing non-whites for vaccines, potentially at the cost of more lives. Far from the civil rights ideals of equality, discrimination now affects individuals based on race, reshaping societal norms. In education, racism re-emerges with alarming vitality. Universities are not only hosting speakers indulging in racially charged fantasies but are also embracing segregation by offering racially exclusive dormitories, orientations, and graduations. This regressive trend extends to school districts where layoffs are determined by race, and principles like objectivity and perfectionism are viewed through the lens of white supremacy. Media, too, plays a troubling role. It often overlooks police killings of unarmed whites, despite surpassing those of blacks. Projects like the New York Times 1619 Project twist historical accuracy, suggesting, for instance, that preserving slavery was a key motive for the Revolutionary War, contrary to historians' evidence. Films like Hidden Figures also fall into this pattern, distorting truth for ideological narratives. These practices, rather than promoting justice or equality, deepen societal rifts. Institutions tasked with fostering unity have instead legitimized anti-white discrimination as a counterbalance to historical wrongs. However, this approach merely breeds further injustice, fostering resentment and hostility. The intrigue lies in how such a divisive movement gained widespread acceptance, altering the landscape of societal values. Shifting the dialogue. A decade ago, many Americans felt optimistic about race relations, but recent years have seen a stark decline in this sentiment. To understand this transformation, we must consider the technological revolution sparked by the advent of social media and smartphones around 2013. These platforms turbocharged the spread of information, favoring content that stokes emotions and highlights tribal divides over thoughtful, unifying messages. Enter neo-racism, a mindset that flourishes in this charged atmosphere, framing societal events as ongoing racial conflicts and keeping racial differences front and center. The issue with this approach is that it doesn't mend racial divides, it risks widening them. History shows that focusing heavily on racial distinctions tends to ignite hostility rather than foster understanding. The civil rights movement, deeply anchored in the cohesive moral vision of Christianity, recognized the power of unity over division. However, as traditional religious influence has waned, neo-racism has stepped in, offering a less fulfilling way of imparting shared dignity in values. What can be done? While it might sound contentious, a more effective strategy for improving race relations may be to discuss race less frequently. The focus should be on addressing specific, tangible incidents of discrimination while deliberately emphasizing our greater shared humanity. Actor Morgan Freeman encapsulated this notion by suggesting that we stop referring to each other by race and begin viewing one another simply as people. To truly combat racism, the narrative should pivot from division and conflict towards unity and shared identity. Dispelling neo-racism myths. Certain ideas about racism in America have gained widespread acceptance, even though they often stray from reality and cause more harm than good, particularly for people of color. At the heart of these mistaken beliefs is the disparity fallacy, which wrongly assumes that all racial inequities are rooted in racism. However, differences often arise from cultural, demographic, and geographic variations rather than bigotry. For example, the predominance of Chinese elite piano players or Uzbek chess champions reflects these natural disparities, not discrimination. Yet, neo-racists frequently overlook such realities, wrongly attributing every unequal outcome to unfair practices. Added to this is the myth of undoing the past, where reverse discrimination against white people is believed to correct historical injustices. Similarly, the myth of no progress denies significant advancements in racial attitudes and policies since the 1960s, ignoring the strides made by leaders like Frederick Douglass and Nelson Mandela. The myth of inherited trauma perpetuates a sense of victimhood among black people by emphasizing generational suffering from slavery, overlooking that many communities have ancestors who endured hardships. This belief fosters helplessness instead of resilience. The myth of superior knowledge posits that black individuals possess unquestionable insights into racism, while dismissing the universal need for perspective and correction. Finally, the myth of black weakness portrays black people as lacking power, despite their substantial political and cultural influence. Debunking these neo-racist fallacies is crucial not to undermine genuine racism but to challenge a counterproductive outlook. The real path to progress is by transcending racial divides, promoting honesty over ideology. In tackling racism, America needs clarity and truthfulness to forge a more inclusive future. Choose the right path. In recent times, our strategy for tackling racism has veered off course, causing divisions while attempting to eradicate them. Neo-racism fuels these divides, ironically under the banner of anti-racism, creating unintended and detrimental outcomes. Affirmative action, meant to be a solution, often misfires by lowering standards and spawning resentment, thus undermining the genuine achievements of minorities. America stands at a critical juncture with two potential futures. Neo-racism, a path perpetuating endless conflict among racial groups, offers no promise of unity or shared purpose. The alternative path returns to foundational principles like colorblindness and equal justice, working towards unity over division. This path emphasizes the profound belief that our common bonds surpass our differences. Progress demands a pivot from dwelling on racial discord to focusing on education. By investing in high-quality early childhood education that fosters skill development and a culture of high expectations, we can bridge racial disparities more effectively than superficial diversity quotas ever could. The civil rights movement envisioned a nation where every child has the chance to pursue happiness through excellent education, abundant opportunities, and freedom. A society where open dialogues, not intimidation, resolve our differences. Innovation and collaboration across backgrounds can lead to shared success. This vision of justice and unity is achievable if we consciously choose the right path. By learning from past mistakes and dedicating ourselves to our highest principles, we can construct a society of mutual respect and flourishing. The stakes are immense, but the power to shape a hopeful future rests within our hands.
In concluding The End of Race Politics, Coleman Hughes calls for a pivotal shift in how we approach race relations. He argues that the prevalence of neo-racism, characterized by divisive identity politics and reverse discrimination, detracts from real progress. By clinging to racial categories and grievances, we risk perpetuating cycles of resentment and inequality. Hughes urges a return to the civil rights-era ideals of colorblindness and shared humanity, where race is not the focal point of identity or policy. True progress, he suggests, lies in transcending superficial divides through high-quality education and equal treatment. The book leaves readers with a choice between maintaining divisive racial narratives or embracing a vision of unity and mutual understanding. In recommending a path forward, Hughes envisions a society where dialogue prevails over hostility and where the shared dreams of all individuals are prioritized over the fractures of the past.